Okay, hello. So what I'm going to be talking about today is how to use scripts with Praat to do some automatic analysis, and how to modify some scripts as well, so that with very simple modifications you can do quite a lot of different things with them. So let's go on to Praat. Okay, so first of all, you open Praat. Let's look. I want to show you a couple of different scripts. Let's go for a simple one. Okay, let's go for this one here. Now, so let's look at this one here. So this one, what it does is analyzes the F1, the F2, and the F3 of vowels. So let's open some files, and this is a very simple one. And what it does is, apart from being simple in terms of analyzing only the F1, F2, and F3, it analyzes the mean of the F1, the F2, and the F3, but also it does an audio file per file. It doesn't do the whole folder. So I'll show you that later, how to do that. So let's look at this one here, for example. So I'm gonna get E, open E. So one thing as well is view and edit. It's a very good idea if you're going to start using scripts and playing around and trying to learn how to use them. I really kind of advise you to have a very short and simple audio file that you can just use as a sample. So for example, this one, let's go to this one. So you get an audio file, you annotate that. I've got another video, but we've got thousands of videos on YouTube. So this is a recording. So in this case, we have 15 E, 15 and in Spanish, and I'm going to be focusing on vowels. So we've got E, E. Okay, so what I suggest that you do is, first of all, you analyze. So in this one, we're going to be focusing on the vowels. So F1, F2, and F3. So you go here, you go to format, F1, and then you get the F1, or you can just press F1 on your keyboard and you get it as well. So I recommend that you write down whatever you're measuring, in this case, the mean F1, F2, and F3 for each of those vowels. And that way, when you use the script later, you can see whether or not you're getting the right measurements. You can even do, this one doesn't do it, but if another script does things like length, you can also write down the length as well. And that way, you can just compare and make sure that it's working properly. So I really recommend you to do that. So this script, what it does, let's look at this. So I'll show you the part of a script later on in a more complex one, because it's a bit easier to see. So this particular script has to use this one, you need to have a sound file and annotated. So the annotation as well, you need to have them both open, and then you have to select both, because this script is designed to do the analysis on this sound and on this text grid. So some others do everything in a folder, but this one doesn't. So that is just a simple one that I wanted to show you. So what this one has is, it has on the top a couple of notes on what this does. And then here it chooses this sound in this text grid. And then it tells you, it creates a file. So here, CSV file. So the file is going to come out called formants. And if we want to call it something else, like let's say analysis, we'll put in capitals so that it's easy to see. Or analysis, yeah, like that. And then this is where the output file, the output file is going to be saved. And then so here selects the label. I'll show you, I'll talk to all this later on in a more complex one. Okay, and this says what it's been done there. Okay, so let's look at this. So you get this, you do run, and so we've got extract informant, which is a bit of a sentence I put there to know what it's doing. Several intervals, woohoo, it didn't crash or it worked or something like that. And then if we go here to where I save these, we have this, which is analysis. And you have the name of the file, the time, the word, and the phoneme. So E from quince, E, which is the last vowel in quince, and that, and then you've got the F1, the F2, and the F3. Yep. So obviously make sure, so a couple of things here. Here, as you can see, we've got 5,000. So this is the setting for a male, for a female voice, sorry, male voice. This recording in particular is actually from a female speaker. So this would have to be 5,500. So I just want to show you how a simple script works. Let's look into a complex one and how to use it. So in one respect, actually, you've got, you can start from scratch, and it's good practice to start from scratch, but up to a certain point, once you start writing or working with more complex scripts, I do think it's a bit easier to just find a kind soul who has given up his time or her time to share a good script and modify it. So that way, you can just start with a much stronger base. You don't have to do the very time-consuming initial setup, and then you can just modify it to analyze whatever you want to analyze. So let's look at, okay, let's look at this one here. So a few things. So this, I modified this. So there was the base script was done by Shigeto Kawahara. So I used his, and then I modified it to analyze something that I want to analyze. So let's look at the parts of our script. So you've got on the top, you have usually who's done it or who's modified it from, or whatever. And the initial one was a lot simpler. I added quite a lot of things, but obviously I've got to acknowledge that this person did the initial work. So let's look at this. So it says, usually say what it analyzes. So this analyzes the duration in milliseconds, the F1 mean, the F1 at 20% of the segment, F1 at 80%, and F2, the mean at 20%, and then at 80%. At individual point, and then mean pitch at 20, pitch at 80. And I developed this script for an article that I was working on that was looking at diphthongs. And so I wanted to look at the first and the second vowel in each diphthong and see how the F1 and F2 change from one to another. So you've got the information there. Then here, what you have is the form. So for example, if we click run, you get a form with different options. So this form is what you get from here. So let's look at this. So you get the information, you've got wherever the initial file is. So this is written so that when you open this goes exactly onto the folder where I'm going to put the files. And this specific script, what it does, it analyzes everything within a folder. So if you were to use this script, then what you would have to do is you would have to modify the folder that it's going to analyze all the data from. And you also would have to change the path and the name of the resulting file. So here it is set up for me, but then you would have users, your username, and whatever. Yeah. So things, so you've got the form, and then here, for example, if we press, so at the moment, maximum format 5,500 for females. So let's press that, run. That's what you get here. So obviously you can change it, and whatever you change it to, now let's mess around with this. Whatever you change it, and then you press OK, it would do it. But the initial values are the ones that are here. If we put here, I'll put something so that you can see. If you do that and then run, you can see that the initial value is whatever we put here. So put it like that, not to mess it up. Then because in this one I was doing pitch and intensity, so I've got minimum pitch, maximum pitch, and all the stuff. So a few things I've got. So I've got here a line which is called, I just put genius at work, but you can put something like it's working in it, or whatever you want to put. And the good thing with that is if you're going to be analyzing quite a few files, sometimes everything goes white blank and you don't know whether or not it's working. So having that line at the beginning is quite useful, because that you know that nothing's happening, but the computer is actually doing the work. So yeah, so that is an important line. Then let's see what this does here. So this bit here, what it does is it checks the actually I can do a test. So what this does is it checks that the file that you want to create, I'll do one, I'll give you an example. So let's go here. All these analysis, which is this one that we have open here. Close it, and I press OK. So what it says is that this file already exists, whether you want to overwrite it or whether you want to stop, interrupt it. And that's the line. So that tells us in this case was quite quick, but if nothing was happening, just by seeing that line, you know that it is working. And the genius as well at work is from The Simpsons, but it is from here. So whatever you put here, in this case, you can say I'm working or whatever. Now, one thing as well before I forget, so the output files are going to come out in CSV, but as soon as you get that file, I really recommend that you change it onto Excel, because that way you can make changes and use it a bit better and save it. I've had a couple of instances when I've made changes to the CSV file and then saved it, and then those changes were kind of lost because they didn't come up. The one that CSV didn't process and register and save the changes I've made. So Excel is a lot better. So, okay, let's look at more parts here. So this is whether or not you want to overwrite the file. Then this is going to create the output file, the final file. And then these are the columns that you're going to get on the Excel or on the CSV file. So the columns are going to be name of the file, the onset, the word, and then you could put this here. So you can change whatever you want. You could even put, so now house or whatever you want to put. So this is just the title on the first row, of the first, okay, about onsets. Okay, I want to mess this up. So this go and close, I'll open again. Actually, before I do that, sure, let's do these tests. Okay, so it's a bit easier. It takes less time for these two. Okay, let's go back to this one here. Okay, so I want to run this to show you a few things. And let's call this, let's call this test one. Test one. Woohoo, it didn't crash in it. That's the message I've put. And test one is here. We've just created this. And if you look at this, those are the columns that you have, the names that you have here. So file, onset, which is the onset of the tier, that segment that you're analyzing, onset F1 mean, F2 mean, 20%, yep, all that stuff. Now, a couple of things is this, because this thing here, or this list of titles of headings has to correlate and be in the same order as the final section. What this bit does here, this put all the information of the analysis, puts it in the same order as you've got it here. So if you put this pitch, for example, pitch 2, if you put it there, the analysis will still be done, but then you will get let's say lowest pitch, you might just get it here, the values here. So that's why it's quite important to have the same order here in the columns on the top as you have here in the output. So this output doesn't have to be exactly the same way as the analyses are carried out, but this has to be in the same order as this here. So otherwise everything might come out, you might think that everything's okay, but the results are going to be in the wrong columns. Now this script, what it does is it analyzes everything in one folder. The only thing is that in the same folder, you need to have, show you here, for these scripts, you have to have the same audio, an audio with the same name as the test grid. So you need to have them there. So whatever you want, in this case, what I do is whatever I want to analyze, I put them into this folder. Yep. So now I just put some very short, 3 short audio files. So that way the analysis is a lot quicker, but you can put there much longer things and then the computer will just sort things out for you. So let's look at more things that it does. So here, what the file is doing is it's going through, it's creating a list of all the files that it's got to analyze, everything in the folder. And then let's look at what it does. Here is extract the first tier. And then what it does is it just goes straight, it goes file per file, extracting everything. So you don't have to worry too much about this. Now let's look at this one here. So create the pitch and intensity and the format tier. This one's here. So when you're using Praat yourself as a user, you can just open a file. Let's say you open a file, you go into wherever, you press F1. Oh, that's too long. Of course, it's too long. You can press F1 or F2 and you get the values. But the way this works, the script is it's got to create an object of whatever you want to analyze, intensity or so intensity, pitch, or the format, and then it analyzes it from there. Yeah. So these things here creates the format, the pitch object, and intensity objects, and then here I've put some notes there. But this is the minimum pitch and the other number is the time step here. Yeah. So these ones are going to be whatever you set up in here. So if you've got minimum pitch here, 75, that is the value that it's going to use here. Okay. So it extracts all the files, all the intervals, and then it calculates F1, F2, and F3. Now these here, one thing as well, which is quite useful, is if you put this kind of hash, the pound sign, after that, you can put any comments that you want, and the Praat won't act on them. Those are there for your information, but they're not acted upon. So you can put whatever you want here in this line, and there will be no issue because it won't read it. So that is useful for you to have notes. And also, for example, for this particular article, I didn't want to analyze the F3. So what I did was I just put this before the F3. So that way that bit there is deactivated, it's not working. And if I want to, it's a table as it says there. If I wanted to activate this, then what I would have to do is delete that and then add this kind of result F3. I would have to add that to the spreadsheet, to the list of things that I'm going to be reading and add it to the spreadsheet. Okay, so let's look at this one here. So you've got that, it's extracted the object, and then what it does is it calculates exact times. So here you need the values that all the other kind of equations and measurements are going to be based on. So we've got duration, and in this article, I was looking at the midpoint, the first 20% and the 20% and the 80% of each vowel. So you can do, for example, here is this phoneme start time plus the duration. So you've got the duration is the end and the beginning and the end of each phoneme. It gives you a time. Then the beginning of the phoneme plus 20% of the duration is 20% of the vowel. If you want to calculate, let's say 30% of the point at which 30% of the duration. So you would call this 30, for example. 30, and then here would be duration multiplied by all 3. Yeah, and that way you've got 30 there. So we could do the same. For example, let's say that you wanted to create 70 because you want to analyze the mean F1 and F2 between 70 and 80% of the portion of a vowel. So you could put 70 here, and then this would be multiplied by 7. Yep. So you got here, so you select the format, and then the first bit here, what it does is it gets the mean of the F1 and of the F2 of the vowel onset and offset as well. And here we've got that defined. Let's look at here. This point here, what it does is this section here gets the value, so specific value of the F1 at 20% of the vowel. And here it gets the F2 of the vowel at 20%. So let's say that we say, actually, for this article, I want to do 30. So if you change that for 30, then you would have to do it here. And I recommend that you do it here, even though this is not activated now. That way, if you enable this later on, it will be ready. So but this is going to be analyzing the F1 at 30% of this interval. And 30 is already defined there. So one of the issues that you might get is that you might put here a number, let's say 45, and 45 is not defined there. So when it comes to doing that analysis, it's not going to find the reference point and it's going to crash. So also talking about crashing, one thing that you can do as well is it doesn't work as well with this one here, but when you have some scripts that when you use a script that doesn't read everything in the file, that just kind of that doesn't read everything in a folder, one of those that you have to select the files, you can put info lines. So for example, where it says here write info line, you can put write info line and then put things like checkpoint 1 and copy. You can just put it here as well, checkpoint 2. And then what it does, what Praat is going to do is whenever it's analyzing things, as it gets to that command, it's going to show checkpoint 1, checkpoint 2 in the window. So that way you will know that it's working. And sometimes when you get an issue, when the whole thing crashes, it's very difficult sometimes to find where the issue is. So by having those lines there, those checkpoints, it's a bit easier because you know, okay, so up to here is working, I can forget about it. Then you've got to continue with the rest. Yeah. So let's move on to more things here. So here is analyzing now the 80%. So this is going to be going to get the F1 and the F2 at 80% of the vowel. Then it's going to calculate the duration. It multiplies it by 1,000. So that way you get it milliseconds. And then the pitch. The pitch at the moment is set up to do the mean of the whole vowel. And then the specific value at 20 and 80. And then the maximum and the minimum in this period. If you wanted to get, for example, let's say that you wanted to do, I don't know, the maximum pitch between 20 and 80% of the vowel. So here you would put 20 because that's what we called it, that's what we defined it, and then here you would put 80. Yeah, and you have to be very careful, always using the same names and definitions as you've put there. Okay. And then, so it's intensity and pitch is the same. And then it gets the word interval, and then it saves it to the spreadsheet. And then one thing here, so what it does is it saves whatever you've calculated. So for example, if you look at these ones here, so to get the minimum intensity in a vowel, we've called it intensity _5. So that's going to be the last value that comes up here. So all these values feed from these equations here. Yeah. And then here, what it does is it selects everything and then removes everything and tidies up the Praat window. So I've changed a few things here, so I'm not sure whether it's going to work or not. Let's give this a go. Okay, so it's saying that this file already exists. We've got checkpoint 1 there, so it's working. So let's do, yeah, okay, let's override it, sorry. Okay, it's doing things, woohoo, didn't crash. And then let's go here, script analysis, this 1533, the current time. This is the one we've created. and it is here. So this undefined is because the minimum and the maximum pitch will put it outside of a range that, and so here it goes out of that range. And then you've got the phonemes and the word. Yeah. So you've got that there. Yeah, so and then you just have that. It's very important that whenever you save, you're careful. So you kind of save as a different name. And one thing as well is if you want to kind of play around with this one, what you would have to do is change the directory that is going to take the, so create a folder, put the audio and the scripts, the annotations that you want to analyze, put them in a specific folder, make sure that you put here the path to that folder. And then the result file, you have to put your own one as well. And then you're ready to go. Yeah, so one thing as well, I'll show you actually before we go. So I did, let's say, for example, I've got one for diphthongs. So I modified the same script to come up with diphthongs. So, and what I did was analyze the mean F1 and F2 between 20 and 30%, between 70% and 80% of each vowel, of each diphthong. So that way you can see the transition and the F1 and the F2 at the beginning and at the end of the diphthong. So you do that, and what I did for that was I put here 20, 30, 70, and 80. Yeah, so that's as I've shown you earlier. And then here, let's say extract formats the mean of the section between 20 and 30% of the phoneme. So what you do here is you put 20 and 30, because this is the section that you want. If you want to do, for example, between 20 and 70 of the vowel, then instead of 30 here, you would put 70. So you've got to make sure that whatever you want, whatever you put here is exactly the same as you've got here, and that is very clearly defined. Yeah. And then everything else is the same, and then 70 and 80. So it's going to get the F1 and the F2 between 70 and 80. If I wanted to get the F3, what I would have to do is enable that, yeah, and then put this F3, add it there, yeah. So for example, here, what I would do is I would add it like that. Then you would put it, doesn't matter whether it's out of sync or not, and then you put 3, 1. And then whatever you add here, it's got to be in the same order as you've got here in headings. Okay. So, okay, so that's it. Hopefully this will be useful. If you like it and find it useful, you don't have to press like, you don't have to subscribe to anything, just kind of enjoy it, and that's it. Okay, thank you. Cheers.